It is Sunday, February 28th. Let me make sure that's right. Yep, it's the 28th, 2021, and you're watching the PoGo Weekly Digest on PoGo Politics and Government for People of Color. And that intro feels like it's getting shorter and shorter every week, but let's check in with the panel. This week it's me and Vega. We're going solo.
Panel of two.
And of course, everyone knows that Vega carries the war on Christmas, is anti JLo, is abolishing the police and the military state. And I believe there was one other one. Is there one other one I'm missing? Maybe.
I don't know. There usually is, or I'll probably say something this week that'll prompt that. And for the record, the JLo thing is fake news. Okay?
You heard it here first. It's fake news. Alternative media, or no? What was it? Sean Spicer. Alternative facts. Alternative facts.
Alternative. There you go.
How are you, Vega? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Mostly just a lot of getting settled into my new routine now that I'm in a new place. That's pretty much been it. I've taken this last month to take a step back a little bit from like paying attention to every single news that comes out, just for my own sanity. Every now and then it's good to take a break. So I'm just getting back into it now and catching up on all the ridiculousness that we're probably going to touch upon today. So that's pretty much been my life.
Yeah, I absolutely feel you. I feel like the news cycle didn't slow down, but because Trump isn't in office, the bombs that are going off are not as intense and as consistent. Although that's a interesting.
Well,
The pun wasn't intended there for the Aryans.
I
The
don't
strike
know.
on Syria.
I was about to
That
say,
wasn't a pun. It
I
wasn't
was
an
about to say,
intended.
I don't know if that's the one you want to go for.
It wasn't a pun. I swear it wasn't a pun.
Or a turn of phrase, metaphor.
That's
Whatever.
right. I should go back and edit this and remove that, so it doesn't sound like I'm making
We're doing it
puns.
live.
Exactly. I am doing well too.
Why isn't he dead, by the way?
Who?
It's, Bill O'Reilly.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like these older conservative hosts are slowly either going to go out of existence because they're either going to have lawsuits that come up against them with sexual assault allegations, or they're going to say something crazy. Like a lot of these Fox News shows that were like hardcore Trump supporters, they're getting slowly pushed out because they no longer have room for that on their conservative media. But that's okay because they'll go to the conservative news media that does want them. But I also fear that they're going to get replaced, by like Tucker Carlson's. Did you know?
More than likely.
Did you know? I saw this earlier this week. Tucker Carlson was the one that did the Britney Spears interview when he asked that question about Pepsi, what kind of Pepsi she drinks.
Oh, I did see that. I
Yeah.
actually just recently saw that video. I didn't realize that. But then I
It's
remembered that he was on CNN. So of course
Yeah,
it makes
he
sense.
used to be a co-anchor or one of the anchors on CNN, and he was also the person that did that interview. I watched the entirety of this interview because now he's this very revered, like conservative news media commentator, and does all these like the Democrats are bad, socialism, communism, the end of the free world. And I'm like, there you were years ago
Socialism.
asking
Is
Britney
it
Spears if you drank
truly good?
Pepsi. Also, it was after the Super Bowl where she kissed Madonna, and like that was one of the big things of the interview. And I was like, wow, how far or how easily we forget that the fools like are now running these like conservative news media. Yeah, it's crazy.
Although
It's
I
absolutely
don't
crazy.
think it's I don't think it's necessarily a coincidence that like he went from like centrist modern Democrat to hardcore Republican in like less than a decade. So I think
Yeah.
that's saying something about the status of moderate Democrats. But
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. CNN originally brought him on because they wanted to like have an anchor that was going to represent the conservative right. And,
Oh,
here
that's
he
right.
is
Yeah.
now on Fox representing the far right, like conspiracy theory, QAnon folks, like spewing nonsense.
Mm.
But it's been A good weekend for me. It was my dad's 77th birthday, so happy birthday, Dad.
Oh, happy
Yeah,
birthday to your dad.
yeah, he was something else on his 77th birthday. He took a picture with me. The bigger news before we go into my dad's crazy story, is that both my parents now are vaccinated with both doses. So I'm super happy and excited about that. And so, now I feel a little bit more comfortable entering their home. And so for his birthday, my brothers ordered this seafood smorgasbord because he loves seafood, and I went to pick it up. I don't like seafood. I think it's the most disgusting thing in the world, and so I had to drive with the cars down. I had to drive with the car windows down with my mask on, and even then, I could still smell this shit. But my dad was loving it, and as soon as he got it, like, he wanted to dig in. My mom wanted to take pictures for the Facebook. But yeah, I had a good weekend. It was quiet except for my dad's 77th birthday, and it's a big moment for him. He was very excited about it, and now both of my parents are vaccinated, what I'm super excited about. That was probably the highlight of my week this week.
Nice, congratulations. At least you have like now they'll have a little bit of a peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Although now they're like, "Oh, let's start planning our travels," and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa!"
Oh my God, no! Slow
That's
down.
not how it works.
It takes
They're
some
like,
time
"Oh,
for this
let's
thing
go
to
to
kick in.
Mexico. We're gonna go back to Mexico," and like, I was like, "No, no, no. That's not how it works. That's not how it works at all."
It's not a cure. It's just like a condom, I
Yeah,
guess.
exactly. Now that is wow.
I
Right.
don't know how else to explain it to
Next week,
folks.
that's what I'm going to put in the little COVID-19 thing. Instead of vaccines, I'm going to put COVID-19 condoms.
Vaccines as condoms in this
Yeah,
essay. I will.
it's a protective barrier. It's not 100% protective, but it does the best.
Right. Exactly.
But let's get into it right there with COVID-19. This week, COVID-19, the cases have begun to drop across the country because a lot of folks are getting vaccinated, and the surges that we were experiencing from the Christmas, Thanksgiving, Super Bowl have all started to subside. And today, or was it today or yesterday, maybe, Johnson & Johnson got their vaccine approval. Dr. Anthony Fauci did the rounds on the news shows this morning to talk about it because a lot of people are questioning the efficacy. It's a lot lower efficacy than the Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna vaccines, the two of them. But Dr. Fauci is saying that people should still get them, and that I guess it's not apples to apples when you're comparing the vaccines, and that being vaccinated is better than not. Pfizer's is, of course, only one dose versus two. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the disparities that are happening right now across the country with the COVID-19 vaccination and communities of color. Disproportionately, communities of color are not being vaccinated as fast as other communities. And so they are also the ones that are experiencing the most death. So let's start with COVID-19. 500,000. The 500,000 lives lost mark happened this past week. And it's great that a new vaccine is out that'll help get folks vaccinated and start creating this herd immunity that they want. But there is still huge problems that are occurring for COVID-19 and the management of the vaccine distribution and the actual management that each state and city has set up for their setting up appointments and getting vaccines has also been a hot ass mess. And so let's start there. COVID-19. Vega, I know that you have received both vaccinations as well, and so maybe you can speak on your experience, but what are your thoughts on where we're at right now with COVID-19, the new vaccines, and this mismanagement that seems to be happening across the country?
Yeah. Well, first off, what I will say is that I'm 13 days out from having received my second vaccine, and I have yet to develop superpowers. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the vaccine is a dud. No one should get it, and blah. No. Um,
Wow. Not how I was expecting you to lead in the COVID-19 section.
I just, I wanted to give it a little bit of levity because, like, a lot of people, for so many good reasons, are hesitant about this vaccine. You know, beyond just the anti-vaxxers, beyond the people who are like just anti-science in general, like this, you know, we're seeing it even in the rollout right now. This country has had a very shitty record when it comes to the health of Black and brown folks. So again, this is just, you know, a more modern take on it. And this is it reminds me of the conversations that used to happen. I'm saying a lot late recently. It reminds me of the conversations that were happening around trying to label racism as a health issue, um, because it has such a direct impact. And we're seeing that, and we're seeing that with this. So not only are we not reaching out to communities of color, we're also not doing anything about trying to kind of like handle misinformation, which, you know, that's just going to be an ongoing issue as long as Facebook and all these social medias have the politicians in their pockets. Um, but it's it's frustrating having to combat that misinformation. It's so kind of like complicated when I'm speaking to like elders and like, you know, at my job and stuff, and telling them about my experience, and they'll be like, yeah, I understand, and it's good for you. I'm glad that you were brave enough to do it, but I don't know if I'm ready to take that risk. Which then leads into the virus, you know, evolving into something else, and then we're going to have required we're going to require different kinds of vaccines, and that's also not even going into whether or not the vaccine is going to need boosters down the line. So it's a lot of information, and even me trying to explain it is difficult because there's no real easy way to kind of like disseminate this kind of information just to get that out there. Number one. Number two, so that people can see that they're being underserved, which most people already do anyways because the USA. Um, and then I just wouldn't know what the next steps would be. Because like even here we have the example, and I think I talked about it the last time on the show, um, where a community that is just like, you know, purely mostly Dominican up here, like Washington Heights, um, where the majority of the people are coming from New Jersey, like, you know, rich towns in Jersey crossing over to um, Washington Heights to get their vaccines. So because they have the information and the ability to kind of like sign up for that too, because I don't know if that's an issue in other states, but at least here in New York State, um, we haven't like there's like multiple links to try to get an appointment, and some work for some locations, some don't. Some require you to do something and check any available date in order to select the location. It's just a mess. It's just such a mess. And like I say all the time, I just wish it didn't come with such a high like body count, you know. The fact that we're over half a million, I, I don't even I don't even know how to respond, like to talk about that, because how do you talk about half a million lives lost because of ineptitude and misinformation and just it just I can't think of anything in U.S. history that has pointed out and highlighted just how this is like all the structures in this country work,
Yeah.
and how they work against Black and brown folks, and how they work against, you know, just people's best interests.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the same issues that you're speaking on are happening across the country. So here in Chicago in particular, I know that the vaccination process to like get an appointment is a mess. For the longest time, you had to like call a number. There was a link on the Chicago Department of Public Health's website. There were links on the Illinois State Department of Public Health website. And then that would take you to another site that would tell you to click on these links. It would tell you to make an appointment at one of those, you know, public health centers, and you'd click on those and all those appointments would be gone. And then they tell you to go to the Walgreens page, and you go to the Walgreens page, and the Walgreens page says there are no appointments. It's a hot ass mess. And the communities that need to access the vaccinations here in Chicago, the Black and brown communities, are the ones that are hardest hit by COVID-19 and COVID-19 deaths. We also were having the same issue where suburban folks were coming into Cook County and the city limits to get vaccinated. And so I absolutely agree. There is misinformation out there. There needs to be information campaigns that are multilingual, visual, audio, that reach out to communities of color so that they're able to get the information, and also so that they're able to understand what it is they're receiving. There's so much out there. I can literally go right now and buy a Facebook ad that has some crazy ass figures and data about COVID-19 and the vaccinations and spread it like wildfire, and people that are already anti-vaxxers or people that are anti-maskers or people that just think that this is all a hoax will spread it like wildfire. And although Facebook might catch it at some point and take it down, it could have spread to 2,400 people by then. Somebody could have screenshot it or screen recorded it and then shared it differently, shared it on different media platforms, and the next thing you know, people have this like chart of data that's erroneous information and that has all sorts of crazy figures and talks about how this is a hoax. And like in the beginning of this, I remember people saying, oh, it's just the flu causes more deaths and blah, 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 all that shit that people spread at the beginning. It's very easy for that to happen. So there needs to be a concrete information, like marketing plan to reach out to communities. And I know I've talked on this, before, and I've made light of it. Like telenovela stars, radio personalities in the Latinx community would be really effective because our like elders are sitting down every night watching their favorite telenovelas, and if you had Marimar come out and like give a whole spiel about how like Marimar is gonna get vaccinated, people are gonna be like, I'm gonna get vaccinated because Marimar got vaccinated.
Right.
And I think that
there's just
go ahead.
There's just one like real quick thing about that though, is that it's the misinformation. And then also there is no real actionable, there's nothing being done about addressing people's concerns about the vaccines as well, particularly in communities of color. Like there's nothing that is like proving to like, at least the people that I know, like there's nothing that makes them feel comfortable to do it. Even if they get all the information in the world because of history, because of their past, because of I really can't think of any Black and brown person that like that has always had positive experiences at their doctors. Those all play a role in it too. So it's more than information. It's also about just I don't know, the word is impact, intent. I don't know, but it's just those concerns need to be addressed as well before people can even be comfortable to either receive information or be comfortable to go get the vaccine.
Yeah, I think I wholeheartedly agree with you. There needs to be 100% transparent, honest conversations about the, harm that this government has done to communities of color around vaccination, around medical procedures, anything like that. Because there's definitely distrust from the people to the government, which is like legitimate distrust. Like, I don't trust it, And so you want to have the information, but you also want to be able to like talk to someone and I don't know if it's assuage or give them as much information as possible so they can make whatever determination they want to make. But there is a like documented history in this country of the medical establishment harming communities of color, especially for medical progress. And so they absolutely, there has to be an information campaign. There has to be open and honest conversations. And I think that there has to be transparency and like, I guess like, you have to, the government has to own its shit. These medical institutions have to own their shit. Universities have to own their shit. And they often don't. They often mask it in this, like, in the interest of progress and science and advancing causes and saving lives. But often a lot of people were hurt, damaged, or killed because you were doing all of this. There's documented cases of white medical people that were doing experiments on enslaved people, and then they had them, and like those people, although may have contributed to medical advances, were harmed in the whole process of it and died without having given credit, compensation, acknowledgement, or been able to live like a human being because of medical progress.
Not to mention like all the things that get missed when you're looking at a black body and experimenting on it and just seeing it as a body to experiment on, as opposed to paying attention to what are some of the nuances in which, you know, certain things develop, or like how are you, like it's medicine using black bodies, black and brown bodies, without taking black and brown needs in mind. So it's a lot of, like, for example, sorry, I had an example. I was gonna go somewhere and I completely lost it. So yeah.
That's okay. I have seen from many activists that are advancing the like people of color centered medical care, that doctors are to black women what cops are to black men, and that they often enter medical treatment plans without disregard for black bodies or the way the way everything is different, you know. Like, I can go into a doctor's office and someone that's my age that's white can go into a doctor's office and we have completely different like experiences, body types, reactions, like all of that. And so we don't often take into account, and there is like this white systemic like racism that exists in the medical field that, you know, is causing a lot of this. And the thing about it, just like everything else in this country, it is like been here since the beginning. And so people are often like, well, why are you distrustful? And you're like, well, because it's been over 170 plus years of like crazy bullshit like this.
And that's us being generous about what time period we're selecting.
Yeah. Oh, yes. We're talking about the U.S. because across the world, you know, forever.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing for me too, that is present in full, is that like a lot of folks that have been vaccinated or that have had those conversations, that have been open and honest and transparent, and that have talked to an array of different folks about being vaccinated or COVID-19 itself, don't have a way to have those conversations with each other. You know, older folks are not attached to social media the way younger folks are. Younger folks, they're either not going to post about it or they don't really care. They might get vaccinated, they might not. There's like this whole stigma that says younger people don't think they need vaccinations because they're healthy, and I think that's a bunch of bullshit too.
But that's also all the messaging that was being sent out, like,
yeah,
you know, especially even when considering who was getting the vaccines first. And this, you know, and it's not to say that it wasn't necessary. However, the idea that kept getting pushed, also to kind of excuse sending young people to go back to school and to go back to work, the excuse that was used was that young people would be fine, that young people would be safe from this. So now you're also combating that mindset, as well as everything else. And then on top of that too, you know, there is a generational difference in the way that different generations use social media. There's like the things that are going to attract like older folks or what is going to catch their eye is not the same thing that is going to attract someone that's like a millennial, Gen Z, or and vice versa. So there's also kind of like a something lost in translation when it comes to that too, because we're both receiving information in different ways.
Yeah, my mom is very interested in showing you a picture of the seafood smorgasbord versus like doing a video on her experience getting vaccinated for COVID-19. And so like they're very different. Whereas a young person might be like documenting their whole experience from like getting tested COVID-19, getting their first vaccine, or making light of it, you know, like younger people do use humor in different ways. And like there's all sorts. You're absolutely right. There's going to be generational ways in which like communication happens and how it happens, and if social media is a part of that or it's not. And I think that there are different countries that are doing it differently too to incentivize folks to become vaccinated. In Israel, you get like a government issued green card that says you've received both vaccinations, and then that allows you access to gyms, to go to theaters and movies and things like that. And that's like a weird it's an interesting way to incentivize vaccination, but it's also like a very intense way to like control people. And so it's
And also, we're in, and to bring it back into the way that we marginalize Black and brown folks in this process, what are they doing for the people of Palestine?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like, are they included in that process too? I can assure you that they're not.
yeah.
But
That is
like
an
even
interesting
things like
point.
that, like you look at Israel as like people are going to be using Israel as an example without acknowledging the fact that Israel is also going out of its way to deny this kind of access to Palestinians as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. In the whole article that I read on Israel and how they're doing this vaccination, I didn't read one thing about Palestine, but this has prompted me to go and like do research after the show tonight to see what is the response to Palestine, and like if they're just like, well, you're on your own, we're not worried about you all, and they're not going to do anything about it, but which is probably what I'm going to find, but I'm curious now to see.
Yeah.
Which also,
last I checked was that they were denying the transfer of PPE. They're not on any priority list for the vaccines.
Did see that as well.
They made it difficult for any kind of social distancing to be possible.
Yeah.
So, usual Israel bullshit.
Yeah. What I will also say though is that like, this is right now, it's like prompting a conversation in my head on like skewed media, and right, the media didn't even think to cover in this whole article. They just covered like, how Israel is responding to vaccination and incentivizing its people, but it didn't think to even cover anything Palestine related. And this was from a liberal, like left-wing, like media source. And so it's this whole conversation about how even in the most left, progressive, liberal places, like a lot of communities of colors are an afterthought or not even a thought at all.
Of course. And like, also, because I feel like a lot of the news corporations and stuff like that are not going to be too keen on covering that angle as well, because you're coming into a situation where you have some states and even the federal government coming out and strongly opposing anybody who tries to take up any BDS action. BDS. Oh my God, I know this. Why am I blanking on it? Because I'm sure not a lot of folks may know what that is, but it's boycott, divest, and why am I forgetting the S? Boycott, divest. Basically, is just people taking actions to have some sort of financial sanctions towards Israel until they start acknowledging the atrocities that they're committing towards Palestine. The U.S. government has come out against that, even though it would technically be protected speech. And now some states as well have written it into their laws that any company seen taking any kind of BDS action against Israel,
boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Sanctions is yes.
There you go. Yeah. So that's also the incentive. That would be the incentive for people to not look at that angle as well.
Yeah. With that, we can transition right into the House passing the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package from the Biden administration. However, that has also been marred with a bunch of nonsense. So they had wanted to put the $15 an hour wage increase in there at the national level, and the parliamentarian basically shut them down, said that through reconciliation, they would not be able to put that in there. So at this point, it's going to go to the Senate. It's not going to get included. People are saying that they should remove the filibuster so that they'll be able to pass it, or they should fire the parliamentarian so that they can get someone in there that will allow them to do it. But this is, one of Biden's campaign promises, and will probably be labeled as one of the crowning achievements of his administration, is to pass this $1.9 trillion COVID relief package. But let's dive into the reality of the Biden administration so far. Like, it's been 2 months or a month and a half since Biden has been in office, and promised canceling student debt, promised the 1.9 trillion package, the $2,000 stimulus checks, and immigration reform, immediately like stopping deportations and releasing the children and families that were in ICE deportation camps. And so far, he's written a bunch of executive orders, and he has ordered an airstrike on Syria, and has not really come through for the American folks. And neither of us on this live are surprised. We're not shocked. What I do keep seeing that is interesting to me is all of these folks out there that are experiencing this like sticker shock, right? Like they bought something and like, or this buyer's remorse or buyer's regret, where they were really expecting Biden to go in and like do all of these things, and now they're looking within themselves to find excuse after excuse to make for him, and like, oh, the Republicans aren't cooperating, oh, the filibuster doesn't allow them to, oh, Joe Manchin, who is a piece of shit, but it's not Joe Manchin. It's not that the Republicans are not cooperating. This government presently has all three of the branches of government in control of the Democrats. They're all in control of the Democrats. The House, the Senate, the executive branch, like everything is in control of the Democrats. And they're still acting like they don't have any kind of power. They still haven't made any real moves that are going to support the people that are struggling and have challenges right now in the country. And they're not going to support the people that are not able to make rent, that are not able to pay their mortgage, that don't have the money to pay food on the table, that don't have health insurance to take care of their medical needs, the people that just don't have access to resources. And so here's the Biden administration. The House passed it this weekend. It's going to the Senate, and it's sketchy right now. They don't know if they're going to have the full support to get it done. And so let's transition right into this 1.9 trillion relief package that's going to be Biden's, the thing that Jen Psaki, or Psaki, I'm not sure how to say her last name, is going to talk to from the podium during the daily press briefings and push and push and push 1.9 trillion, but it's not really giving any real answers, and it still has not provided a single ounce of support to people that need it. So where are you at with, Joe and this nonsense package?
Sometimes I wish I can be as optimistic as other people are. Because I generally I don't like to leave people without hope when I speak. Because then it just, it brings down the mood, it makes people like lack any kind of like energy for action or anything like that. So it's not really productive in a lot of ways. But I do every now and then wish I could have that level of optimism to believe that Joe Biden, of all people, Joe Biden was going to change things. Um, I just, I, it's hard to sympathize because, like you said, we and a lot of others saw this coming. We saw this coming, Mr. $2,000 day one, $50,000 student loan forgiveness, closing, like all the promises that he made. It was all just promises to make him look better than Trump, because that's all he had going for him, was that he wasn't Trump. So to get to the actual promises that he's broken, I wish I could say that the Democrats, in both chambers, were like allergic to winning, or make up some kind of fantastical argument in terms to just figure out why they're so just ineffective, especially in a position where they have all the power. Um, but I mean, the most obvious answer is just that they don't actually want to help people. They want the illusion of helping people because that's the brand that they're selling people. So I don't if this government had the ability to act like it cared about people, there is no way in hell that we would have gotten this far with such little aid. But the fact that we're approaching March, arguing about who should receive 1,400 because 2,000 was just it wasn't including the 600. It was including the 600 that was going to be sent out. Um, and arguing about whether or not the $15 minimum wage is just too high for people. It's just there is no actual argument that could be made to deny those things. The only thing that the only possible explanation is greed. The only possible explanation is the desire to make to uphold governmental traditions, like the way that Joe Manchin talks about the filibuster, for example, um, as if it's like some sort of long-standing government tradition. When in reality, it was only like put into effect, I believe, in the 1850s, like shortly before the Civil War, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and then the way that it gets used nowadays wasn't really implemented until things like the Jim Crow laws started to come out. So I I I feel like I sound like a broken record when I say that a lot of this just goes back into like just how the institution of racism work, the institution of all the isms work, the institution of how power works in this country, like. But that's all what it boils down to. It's all about kind of protecting how that runs. So of course they're not going to argue with Republicans or actually stand up for the people who desperately, desperately need help. Um, in the richest country in the world that's supposed to be the most advanced and the best and blah blah blah, like can't even be bothered to send out a measly $1,400 check. Um, I feel like I'm ranting all over the place a little bit in this one. But it's so nonsensical is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
That we're even having this conversation at this point and we're continuing to entertain it as if it's a legitimate argument.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I agree. I think that you're going all over the place because the conversation is all over the place. It makes
Yeah.
no sense. They keep throwing so many different excuses at you, and not you, but like anybody. Like they keep throwing so many
Mm-hmm.
excuses, and they make up the what blockade after blockade, and Biden is having all these meetings with the Republicans coming to the Oval Office, and they're sitting for 4 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end of it, they come out and they're like, "We had good talks," and I'm like, "Well, good talks doesn't do shit. It's not any tangible
Talks doesn't give
action."
me food.
Yeah, talks don't get me food. Like I can't go to the grocery store and be like, "Let's talk about how you're going to give me this food and then we'll be good." It's not going to serve any purpose. It's not providing any tangible action. It's no measure. It's not doing anything. And so yeah, I'm over having the argument. Fuck the Biden administration. They should have gotten shit done by now. They have all the power in all of the branches. They
Yeah.
have the House, the Senate. They have the executive branch. They should have pushed this through. If the Republicans wanted to whine, they should have fucking canceled the filibuster, pushed it through, gotten the 50 votes, had Kamala Harris go in there, do her vote. Somebody should have fucking gone and checked Joe Manchin and said, "Shut the fuck up, vote the way you're supposed to, help the people, do what you're supposed to," and then they would have passed a bill, it gotten to Biden's desk, he would have signed it. But here we are, a month and a half later, and they're just yapping their mouths, talking about what they're gonna do and how this is gonna be blah blah blah. But the other packages that they have passed that had millions of dollars of aids towards businesses, the Republicans were right on that one. When they wanted to bail out businesses, they were right on that one. They were ready to move it. And this whole argument from the Republican right, this whole like this is an excessive bill, is absolutely ludicrous. And so, yeah, I'm over it.
Of
Fuck
course it is, and
everyone
they
at
know
this
it
point.
too. And they know it too, and then they know that the Democrats are not going to fight them on it,
Yep.
so they can get to say those outlandish things. They get to kind of like shout that from the mountaintops, like, "Oh, this is too expensive," because they know that Democrats are going to cave, and they get to spend less money.
Yeah.
So it's all just kind of like at this point, it just feels like a circus act from the Democrats. Like, all right, cool. You're gonna dazzle us and get the same tricks again, the same lies that you're gonna tell, the same promises that you're gonna break. And after a while, it's like you're gonna have like, if the Democrats' concern was to maintain power, they wouldn't willingly be making themselves seem so bad compared to Republicans towards the general populace.
Yeah.
Like right now, like if like I'm just like a regular person that's not really trying to pay attention to politics, or well, okay, I guess if I was like some cis white dude that like doesn't have to care about these things, um, it wouldn't I wouldn't know like I would just see the actions. I would just see that Biden hasn't given me anything. But the news has told me before that Trump gave me stuff. So maybe I was wrong for believing in Biden. And it's just going to lead into this whole thing where the power is going to go back to the Republicans. The Democrats are going to say once again, oh, well, we don't have all the power, so we can't do anything. And it's just going to be a back and forth where at the end of the day, they're not actually looking at the ways to win. They're just looking at ways to make sure that they have their jobs. They're not looking to actually fix things. They're looking at how to look like you're the best fixer without actually fixing anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're all making these like grand speeches on the floor of each house so that they can have sound bites to put in their ad campaigns and so that they can fucking post
Yep.
to Twitter and social media.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a waste of time at this point. Fuck all of y'all. Like all y'all are useless.
It's a
You're
game.
none
It's
of
a
you are
game to
doing
them.
anything.
It's a game to them,
Yeah,
and the only people that lose is everybody that's been dying.
yeah,
Because I can guarantee you that if those 500,000 came out of majority like people who are connected to the politicians and the 1% and stuff like that, I
yeah.
can guarantee you that we would have had a lot of changes by now. We would have had a lot of things put into place to make sure that people's lives are being taken care of.
Yeah. And not to mention that weeks ago, they all came together bipartisan for military spending. They were all like, we can't let the
Mm-hmm.
military, we can't let the soldiers not get their raises, and they all were
Just bullshit.
kumbayaing, holding hands, saying that they were gonna like overturn Trump's veto if he vetoed it, and they were all holding hands, marching like right at spending all this money in the military. But when it comes to money that's aiding the actual people in this country that need it, that have only been given at this point $1,800 over the course of a year to support them during a pandemic that's impacting the whole world, it's fucking ridiculous. And so
Yeah.
again, fuck all y'all. Like that's really what it comes down to. Fuck all y'all. And I hope that those people that had this like wide-eyed like optimistic hope that Biden was going to be the savior, I hope that you are having the eye-opening experience that a lot of people were warning you about, that Biden
I
ain't shit,
yeah.
Harris ain't shit, and that they were just going to be a continuation of everything that we did do, or that everything that Trump did do when he was in office, because he or maybe Trump actually got more. He at least got us $1,800. The Democrats being in power so far have not
That's what a
gotten
lot of
them
people are gonna
shit.
think. That's what a
Yeah.
lot of people are gonna think.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, he was able to get $1,200 and then $600, and then he pulled that whole stunt when they said the second check was gonna be $600, where he's like, I want it to be $2,000. He pulled that whole stunt, and right now the Trump administration got $1,800 out to the people. The Biden administration has gotten zero. So good luck with that, Biden. Good luck with that, Harris. Whoever it is that y'all are, whatever patsy y'all are gonna put up to run in 24. Good luck, because it's already starting downhill. Like the ship is burning, and you're only a month and a half in, and the entirety of the
Yep.
people that actually need support and access to resources, they don't have it. So that's
And
it.
it's also just one last point on it. Like it's also unsustainable. Like it's you can't expect capital to keep running if people are losing their homes, people are losing their ability to feed themselves, people are losing access to a lot of things, people are dying left and right. Like at some point, that negligence is going to affect your beloved economy, and then there's going to be no going back from that point, because it's like, how do you get those lives back?
Yeah.
How do you get people like you? It's unsustainable if you're looking at it from a capitalist perspective.
Yep.
Um, but they're just so used to just functioning as like uh for lack of a better word, a machine,
Yep.
um that they can't perceive of anything happening to their beloved, economy. And so now we just like, unfortunately, what we're going to end up seeing is what's going to happen on the other side of that. Like, what's going to happen when literally people cannot afford to live, period.
Yeah.
What are people going to do? What is that going to push people to do?
Yeah. It's also unsustainable in the sense that they can't even address an immediate need right now. How the hell are they going to address the long term needs? Because just like you said, people are
Right.
losing their jobs, people are losing their homes, people are being evicted, people don't have access to food, they don't have access to shit. There are still places in this country that don't have access to clean water. Like, it's there's no long-term sustainable like plan here. They keep putting band-aids on everything, and then the band-aid rips off because it's old and raggedy and holding on by like its last string. And then they're like, oh well, what's the next band-aid that we can put on it? Because they don't want to put forth any comprehensive reform that's going to be long-term sustainability to support the people in this country. So fuck all y'all.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. And speaking of fuck all y'all, let's move into, the CPAC was this weekend, which is, I don't even remember what it stands for anymore. I wrote it down and then I threw the piece of paper away. It's like conservative.
Conservative Political Action Committee, I
There you
think.
go. Conservative Political Action Committee. And it turns out that it was a whole Trump love fest. They were all like, Trump is the future. We're not going back to the Republican Party of before. Trump is here to stay. Trump is our fearless leader. Trump got us all these things. They made a fucking golden idol statue of Trump that they had
Ah,
plastered in the front. And so this is where we are, America. The second, we have not been on since the second impeachment. That was a failure. And he has now continuously been emboldened that he is basically has immunity to anyone is going unscathed. There are small little things that are happening here and there, like all these attorneys or attorney generals across the country have lawsuits that are pending with him. The attorney general in New York just got his tax returns, and so all sorts of stuff is going to start to come out. But right now, as it is, Trump has come out unscathed from the 4 years of ridiculousness that we experienced, and he is now out there uh, you know, calling on the Republican Party to unify and come together, saying that he's not going to start a third party, that he's here to stay in the Republican Party, and like effectively saying that he is a continuous leader and the one that is choosing how and when the direction of the Republican Party is going. And so, what are your thoughts? Like this whole golden idol, all the memes that I kept seeing is, biblical, like, commentary about the golden idol and don't, that whole Bible story. I'm not going to go into it because we're like, we're not about
no,
that
but
life here.
see, actually, I do really quickly want to touch upon that because as Latinx folks and just as people of color in general tend to be, okay. Growing up, I've been around a lot of Christians. I know a lot of people who have family that are still Christians. I know that sounded fucked up the way I said it. I know a lot of people that are still, Christian. I do know a lot of people who are Christian who believe in Q. So I again, I wish I could say that like I wish I could just like shake somebody and be like, "Do you not have a sense of irony right now?" But the reality is that a lot of people are just going to see that and just not make the connection that it completely contradicts everything that you believe in. But hey, because he's a Republican, because he pretends to go to church, I'm going to worship him, which is like just again like I went to Catholic school. Like one of the things that they drill into your head is the idea that like false idols and all this other stuff and not believing lies that I'm not gonna get into that. Like it's core to the way that a lot of people believe in Christianity. So to go from that core belief and toss it completely for this like image, this like effigy to all that the US stands for, like I don't I do understand how like they're not making that connection because we see that kind of hypocrisy all the time. But this is just, at this point, this is just nuts. This is like you're out here literally worshiping a man because he commands a fan base, and then you want to stoke that fan base because you believe that fan base is your constituency. Um, and the way that they're enabling him from the way that both impeachments turned out, especially the second one, with all the Republicans being like he did something wrong, but we're not going to challenge him on that. Like they don't realize how much they're enabling him, how much they're spelling out essentially the destruction of the Republican Party as we know it, which I'm not going to shed any tears about. But you're now essentially creating out of a political party, you're creating a cult, and after it becomes past cult status, nothing you say to the people who believe in that leader are going is going to change their mind, and that's a dangerous position to be in because the worst thing that you can have, um, besides an uninformed populace, besides an uninformed white populace in particular, um, is an uninformed white populace believing and doing everything that a single person says, which, we saw a piece of that happen on January 6th. And now that Trump got away with that as well, we're going to have a lot more January 6s coming down the road because now they see that they can get away with it. So CPAC was just a reminder of all of that. I went out of my way to not watch a lot of it, just, really quickly peeked at the news things. I saw Ted Cruz trying to make fun of himself and failing at that because Ted Cruz is just a slimy politician given human form. I saw the Trump idol thing. I heard that Trump gave a speech. I don't even want to hear it. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Kimberly Guilfoyle said it best. When she said the best is yet to come. To them, the best is yet to come is still yet to come,
My
and
God.
it's just going to get battier from here.
Oh my God.
And then again, trying to make fun of herself about it, she made it worse. But
Listen, this
I don't
this
know.
whole
I don't know.
CPAC was, and Don Jr. was calling it TPAC. Yeah, it was basically a whole weekend circle jerk for Trump, and like people were just getting their rocks off, like talking up Trump because he has this huge fan base and he has access to all this money because of that fan base. There are all these people that are literally gonna dump
They're
money
gonna give him
into
his life.
Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, and into whoever he backs for whatever political offices across the country. And if you cite these inflammatory lines and say these inflammatory things, you're going to get money, They're all going to crawl up Trump's ass because they all want access to those funds. They're all worried about like maintaining their political power and their political access. And meanwhile, they have constituents all over the place that are suffering. Ted Cruz being a whole joke. Like, Ted Cruz is one of the biggest jokes in this like world. Like, he is a hypocrite and nonsense and stupid for being this Ivy League educated guy. He is a completely fucking idiot. He's just a complete fucking idiot.
No, he's being a politician in the best worst way possible. As in, he is embodying everything that people know politicians to be, and both succeeding and failing at the same time. He's succeeding because he still has power, wildly enough, but it's also not succeeding because it's like anybody else that can see it for what it is just like we're just left dumbfounded at the reality of what this man is. Like, how are you the type of how are you so far up the ass of somebody who called your wife ugly, who accused your dad of killing John F. Kennedy? Like, it seems like a lot of people forgot about that part. Humiliated him, but because to them, none of that matters because the power would have effectively erased that at some point. And I mean, we do see that with a lot of politicians where, they amass so much power that they're effectively untouchable. We're seeing that with Trump right now.
What's interesting to
Um,
me about these voters for these folks like Ted Cruz is their short term memory, and how when it comes time to be able to be like, oh, I can't actually vote to remove this person from office, they forget, like, for example, Ted Cruz and all his like missteps in like, you know, trying to delay the electoral college count and contest the election results. His whole Texas scandal where he was off to Cancun while the state was frozen over, people didn't have access to heat or electricity. And like when it comes time, I don't think that the voters that vote for Ted Cruz are going to be like, Ted didn't do us wrong. And I would not be surprised if he is reelected and he doesn't go anywhere. And so I think that there is this like, I don't know what kind of juice they drank because
well, I wouldn't. So there's definitely an aspect of that's true, but you also got to remember that Texas, out of well, not to say that it is one of the, it's definitely one of the most gentrified states, gentrified, gerrymandered states in the country. So even if you had a situation where a lot of people could see Ted Cruz for what he is and don't want to vote for him, vote him in, the lines are drawn in such a way that he can't possibly lose.
yeah. And there's
And that's
also
how a
voter
lot of these people
suppression
keep
that
their
happens
seats
in
too.
Texas. There's
And
definitely
voter
voter suppression.
suppression.
Um,
And the reality is that if Ted Cruz kisses Trump's ass enough, when it comes time for somebody to challenge him, Ted Cruz is going to have such a rain swell of rain swell, a whole bunch of money to
yeah.
work with, where he can effectively bury
Yeah.
any kind of competition.
All that money that those fools were tossing at Trump to do all these lawsuits that he now has in the bank, he's going to start throwing at candidates all over the country. He'll probably do some appearances for Ted Cruz, and it'll be, you know, hunky dory, another term for the senator
Mm-hmm.
from Texas. um, that fuck all y'all. CPAC, TPAC, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Fuck all y'all must be the theme for today.
The one more thing that I want to say about that though is just it to me it highlights what happens when we don't hold people accountable. You know, there's all this talk, especially amongst the Republicans, like they've really latched on to the idea of, you know, cancel culture being a thing, even though all of them have
God.
careers based on talking about how cancel culture is a thing, effectively canceling out cancel culture, whatever. um, but you know, like the fear that Democrats have of holding people accountable, um, we've seen the evolution of it. You know, a decade ago they were the Tea Party. You know, nobody challenged the Tea Party. The Tea Party effectively just started kind of like leaning more and more closer to what we now know as what we now have as Trumpism, and even that's not being challenged enough. And so it's just going to keep being pushed farther and farther right. And with the way that the Democrats are set up, with the way that the Republicans are constantly seeking, you know, that kind of approval and power, I don't know where that's going to end. I don't know how far right these people can be pushed because no one has a desire to bring them back from that brink.
Yeah.
Neither of the parties.
Fuck all y'all. that's the theme. Fuck all y'all.
Hashtag.
Hashtag fuck all y'all. And to continuing the fuck all y'all, the last thing we're going to talk about tonight is that the U.S. has its presence in the Middle East gone up in the past week because, of course, there was an airstrike in Syria, and because, of course, the U.S. intelligence community has now confirmed what everyone had confirmed for a long time now, that the Saudi prince was, in fact, the person that gave the green light for the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Yes. And so imagine our shock and surprise here. But I just wanted to, I think that this is going to be a developing thing and that more is going to come up. But I think that I wanted to touch on this because it was like bombing a country happened like that. But getting COVID relief, medical care, access to resources, we're a year into a conversation about it. And two is
because
that
only one of them is going to make the money.
Yeah. And then two is that we're going to dive into this whole, like, even on the news show rounds that I saw today, all of these like Democratic senators and spokespeople that were doing the spins were talking about Saudi Arabia, our ally. And
Mm-hmm.
even in like the statement that the White House gave initially was that they were going to revisit their ties and reform the relationship or reinvent the relationship with Saudi Arabia. It wasn't, here's the swift action that we're going to take to punish someone for murdering a journalist that was reporting on like all the things that are wrong in Saudi Arabia. Instead, it was, oh, we're going to see how our oil interests can move forward without damaging that.
Yeah.
And also, so it looks like we're tough on international war crimes. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts briefly on how this is going to start blow up the Middle East involvement with the U.S. again, and how it's, I just, I'm like at a loss for words here because like this is everything that we talked about months ago. Trump was in the same position. Like Trump was like
Mm-hmm.
teetering whether or not to involve himself in Syria, and was like very, because of Putin, was like hands off. And with the whole Saudi Arabia, like he had that whole fucking like photo op with the light in the middle and like his whole trip
The
overseas. And so it feels like this is just Trump.
the ball from Space Jam.
Yes, they all were like centered holding the bomb, like, and so I'm like, the Biden administration is no better, but here we are, we're dipping our feet into the Middle East again, and something is going to happen, but what is it really?
Well, you know,
That's exactly that's how
the
I felt.
political.
You're just like, I don't even know what to say. I'm shit. Like
it's
fuck
it's it's
is really like
it's
where you're at. You're like
exhausting,
fuck.
It's exhausting to deal with people and and kind of like help point them in the direction of saying, hey, look, this is what's wrong with this country. This is what this country is doing to other places. This is why they're doing it. This is why it's hurtful. This is why it only truly benefits a specific group of people. And this is why it's wrong. And yet, I was seeing all over Twitter the last couple of days talking about how, like, it's nice to have a president who doesn't make a big deal of when he makes military actions. And I'm like, so you're praising the fact that he's not jumping up and down because he bombed a foreign country. He still bombed the country, but you're okay with it because he was civil about it. Like, I don't. The cognitive dissonance that has to happen for a lot of people to continue to believe in people like Joe Biden and to continue to believe in the mainstream Democratic Party. Um, it's it's intense. It's insane. It's I feel like I've I've already gotten out of the point of my life where I've tried to drive myself crazy trying to help people understand. I just do what I can and just keep it moving. But like, I don't think people understand how bad this looks and how bad this is. Like, looking at it from a perspective of, well, we can't just go in and charge a prince of a sovereign nation with a crime that he totally committed because that would make things in the Middle East worse. But like, we're still bombing everything else that's not Saudi Arabia. Like, I don't understand how that was the better calculation to make. I don't understand how you continue to believe that not holding people accountable is somehow better and more appropriate because it's the path of quote unquote least resistance. Like, that's not. I'm not saying all this to say like, oh, we should go into Saudi Arabia and bomb it to hell and blah blah blah. I'm not like the issue is that it's very clear that we go out of this country goes out of its way to decide who's the villain of the story and who's the ally. And usually what ends up happening is that a larger number of people end up getting hurt because of it, because the goal of it is just for essentially personal gain. The only people that are gaining out of this is the royal family of Saudi Arabia, the oil companies, the oil tycoons, the military weapon manufacturers. Those are the only people that are actually benefiting from all of this. And yet, for a country that swears that its goal is to look out for its people and to be a beacon of hope for the rest of the world, you know, this country has done a shitty job of it from the jump. Like I don't.
Yeah.
And it's sad because it's like we're dealing with this worldwide pandemic, and now we're also throwing this as well. Like
Yeah.
it's inhumane on so many levels, and if the U.S. were ever to be truly held accountable to it, I can't even imagine that possibility. And it's so damn frustrating because it definitely gives, at least me, every now and then a sense of helplessness because, like, how do you put a stop to it? How do you tell people, convince people, show people, you know, the damage and destruction that we're causing because we're unwilling to say, hey, let's actually look out for the most amount of people. Let's look out for most for the most good that would benefit the most amount of people. Instead, here we are, we're bombing this and that because one of our allies told us that this side would be more beneficial to support than the other. It's political calculations at the cost of human lives, and I it's just a concept that I can never truly get comfortable with, and it's also why I can't ever let myself up on saying at any point, oh, you know what, maybe I should cut this politician some slack because they're actually trying and stuff like that. No, like the has every second that we waste, the US is actively going out of its way to kill people. Whether it's here with, all the mess with COVID and lockdowns and easing up on that, to the bombings of other places, to the way that we pull resources. Like our position in the world as it stands is as like, not to use MCU logic, but like it's it's a warmong. We're a warmongering country, and filled with people who don't want to accept that, and we're causing a lot of we're causing so much death and destruction and damage for what? I know for what, but like I don't, as somebody who believes in supporting people over anything else. Um, it just doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't understand why or how people can even be okay with that, or even okay with supporting anything that continues to support that. That's why we hold Biden to such, excuse me, well, that's why we hold Biden and Democrats to such high standards, because you want to say that you're better than this, and here you are doing the exact same or even worse. Show us that you're better than this. Keep telling people that. Don't keep telling people that just so that you don't have to worry about getting challenged for a re-election. Like, your career means nothing when your decisions lead to hundreds of thousands of lost lives.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that this is going to be more of a lot of posturing and a lot of just the Biden administration putting out a bunch of statements, but taking a lot of action that's going to be actually detrimental to a lot of people. And I think that they're just going to continue to, maintain the status quo, which is to look out for their interests, their business interests, or their like ally interests. And again, they'll probably do something that's really performative, like put sanctions on the prince or say that he can't come to the U.S.
No, I don't even think they'll go that far, to be quite honest with you.
Really, you don't
I don't
think
think they would
you
even go
think
that
they're
far.
just you're like,
No, out of the spirit of international diplomacy, they'd be like, you know what, you know, maybe they won't let him enter the country for a certain number of years, but I don't see anything going beyond that being the kind of like what gets served in response to that. I don't see it.
well, like I said earlier, fuck all y'all. That's where we're at. And sorry for all that like nonsense that was happening earlier. I was totally trying to do things here, and Jesus Christ. Never try to add something to the show in the middle of the show. Because
number one rule of live TV: you don't do anything new.
Don't you? I was like, oh, this is one of my goals for 2021 and Pogo Poc and the Pogo Weekly Digest is to end on a lighter note, not to end on such a heavy note, because it's always heavy. Politics can almost always certainly is heavy.
They all suck.
And so I do have something that I had in here, but I saw earlier this weekend, I saw that Coca-Cola now has like a coffee Coke. And so I was going to try to pull that up because, they have a whole like line of Cokes. And let me see. They have like this thing they say it sips like a Coke, but it finishes like a coffee. I don't know what the fuck that means.
No. The common phrase is people saying that like capitalism, because of the competition, breeds innovation. This is not the kind of innovation we want, folks.
Yeah,
coffee soda. Like this is what the great big capitalist experiment has led to.
Yeah, and then the other one that I saw earlier today is that McDonald's in China offers a burger featuring Spam with crushed Oreos. And so I have to say I have a weird relationship to Spam because growing up poor, we often had like Spam was like a thing.
Vienna sausages.
Yeah. Like my dad can still make Spam.
Vienna sausages straight out the can.
Yeah. And my dad makes Spam, like he cuts up onion, he cuts it up into little cubes, he put chile and spices, and like he used to make them in tacos. Anyway, I understand that Spam can be delicious, but a Spam burger with crushed Oreos,
yeah, see, okay. I'm not saying I wouldn't try it. I'll give it a shot. Although I don't really know how I feel about supporting McDonald's. But
well, we don't have to go to McDonald's. China. McDonald's China only has it. So
fine.
We would have to make it.
I'll support like some local eatery that like, or I'll make it ourselves or something.
Yeah, that's what we should do for next weekend's Pogo Poc. We should all make Spam burgers with crushed Oreos and try them live. That's how we should start the show next weekend.
I don't know if Roman showers are allowed on Facebook.
And because Beacon and Greg are not here, they have no say-so in what we determine to be the start of the show next week. We'll just send them a message and say, next week, cook a Spam and crushed Oreo burger.
And we're just going to bite into them every time.
That's right. That'll be the opening to the show. We're just going to start, we're going to try these Spam and Oreo burgers. I don't think they're going to be down for that, but it's worth a shot.
I don't know if I'm down for it. Like, I'd have to. I don't know. Like, don't get me wrong. Spam and a good Spam can make can become combined into a lot of good things.
Yeah.
I love Oreos. I love Oreos. But Oreos and Spam, I don't know. I don't think I could do it.
That's fair. I won't. I'm gonna think about whether I want to do it myself. But right at that moment when I said it, I was like, "Yes, this is the thing that we should do." The last thing that I didn't want to close out on, because I'm a geek and a nerd and I love Star Trek and I love Star Wars, was that Perseverance made it to Mars. And oh shit, there's like a hole. Let me just boop boop boop. I'm gonna mute the audio. And so I just think that it's super cool. And here's the footage, the first 4K color footage from Mars from Perseverance.
I mean, it's pretty compressed on my end, but
you're like, I can't even see it.
Too straightforward.
You know what? Google that shit.
No.
Just Google it. If you want to fucking see the videos, just Google it. Vega said, fuck your video. It's pixelated. Nope.
because of course my phone can't let me multitask on Safari when I'm also using Safari to do video. But I do know that one of the key people in figuring out the trajectory in order to get to Mars was a black woman. Her name is escaping the top of my head, but it's just something that I heard when I was listening to this story as well. So just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, I think that there's gonna be, um, I'm just gonna get the name real quick because I think it's important to say it.
Yes, yes. I'm like, of course, I don't put any of my other technology to look it up near me.
Okay, I mean, I'm happy that like a lot of the, like when I I googled it, it's not coming up immediately because it's now, of course, bringing up
Of course,
every
it's not.
black woman that ever had anything to do with NASA, which is amazing. I'm happy to see all those results.
Of course.
But we will find the name and we will make sure that this person gets the appropriate accolades next week on
Yes.
PoGo Pac. I just think that it's really cool. My best friend and roommate, who is a space like geek nerd lover, is
Hmm.
like every time I've tried to talk about the Perseverance footage, he's been just like, we've seen Mars before, and I'm like, let me have this moment. The 4K color, and then you were like, it's compressed and it's coming out pixelated, so fuck all y'all. That
So
continues to
basically,
be the theme. Fuck all y'all.
basically, Freddie, you're going around going like, look at this cool thing, and everyone's just shooting you down.
Everyone, no one is about that life. And I was like, I control this show, so I can put on whatever I want. I can do 8 segments on Perseverance, but it was
I
pixelated and
don't know. That
compressed.
sounds very dictatorial. We're gonna have to stop talking about a poop right now.
Anyway, thank you
No,
so
but
much.
the Perseverance footage was cool. I, you know, I want to be excited at the possibility of exploring more and more of the galaxy because I love that shit. Um, but I also just hope that I hope that we get the Star Trek future, you know, as opposed to capitalism finding its way to kind of like get its greedy little fingers into other planets and shit like that. Just as a nerd, I would prefer if that doesn't happen because I would love for the advancement of civilizations and being able to meet other civilizations, which has already been proven as a thing. So, and that's not me with a tinfoil hat. That was proven by the one of
Before
the
we
government.
before I would love that too. And before we go, I want to say that as a kid watching Star Wars and Star Trek, I really thought that by 37, which is where I'm at right now, that we would be on starships up there. But here I am. Here
I
I am on Earth dealing with all this bullshit.
I believe the Jetsons when they were like flying cars in 2001.
Oh,
So when
yeah.
2002 was here, and I'm
Yeah.
like, where's the flying
Yeah.
cars?
The closest to a fucking self-driving flying car is a fucking Tesla, and they're like 100 and bazillion $1 million. But
Mission
by
involved with
37, I
$1 million.
wanted touchscreen panels on my car that I can just like and make it go. But here I am, still driving something that's manual. Anyway, thank you so much for your time and labor this week. Thank you so much for indulging my perseverance spam and my Coke coffee nonsense at the end. Hopefully next week it goes a lot smoother with the positive or funny ending than it did this week. Thank you so much for your time and energy this week. Have a good night. We'll be here next week, everyone. Take it easy and have a good rest of your night.
Bye.